Good evening, friends. In the
Good
continuous
evening.
endeavor to empower the society at large, we have brought in Mr. C.A. Vinay Shraff, who has done various sessions with us. And one of the topics on which we have been keeping on requesting the people who could share his knowledge as to how one can handle the GST litigation. And Mr. Shraff, he has already done different perspectives of law. We requested him, and he was happy to accept our invite. And he's just authoring a book on GST, on which at the end of the session, he will share the details. And thank you, Shraff, for accepting our invite at the last minute. We are grateful to you, and over to you.
Thank you, Vikas, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And I've previously also come on your platform, and I'm really delighted to be back. So today's session being the session on practical perspective of handling GST litigation. So I would urge the participants that if they have any query while I'm discussing or anything they want to add to what I'm discussing, then they can add their comments or ask me anything so that the session is more interactive. And as the topic itself suggests that we are going to discuss the practical perspective. So the more and more real life examples we share, it will make it more interesting. So to start with, the GST litigation starts either with an audit under Section 65 or an investigation, search or seizure under Section 67, or by issuance of a summon, which is also an investigation, but wherein in the investigation, search or seizure under Section 67, the departmental officer goes to the premises of the business entity, whereas in the case of summon, on a particular date, the SAC is asked to come with the required details and documents, whatever may be the subject matter of investigation, to the office of the investigating officer, or it may be a jurisdictional officer also. It may not be that the assessing officer has come to a conclusion about any wrongdoing. Maybe the summon may be issued on the basis of this data analytics of the GSTN portal. And now a lot of litigation is arising through the data analytics. So the officers are using the artificial intelligence data analytics. They are going through the GSTN portal and they are issuing the summon, or maybe they may initiate an audit proceeding. Now in an audit proceeding, you see, once the audit is done, so I will discuss step by step, like say first audit is done, then it may culminate into a so-cause notice, which again will be in two stages. One will be a pre-so-cause stage, which is issued in form DRC 01A, and then a final so-cause notice after receiving the reply of the SAC, which is issued in form DRC 01. Thereafter, once the reply is received and a hearing is given, then an order is passed. Against that order, one may file an appeal before the first appellate authority. If one succeeds, then the department may go in appeal. If the SAC fails, then you may go in for the appeal before the tribunal. Now the tribunal, even though you see notifications are being issued by various state department that the tribunal has become functional, but if you look at the length and breadth of the country, most of the tribunal are not yet functional. They become operational in the sense that their registry is functional. You may file an appeal through portal. If you have a difficulty in filing, then the office of the tribunal is functional, where the registrar is there, the other people are there, they may help you or assist you in your filing activity. But the hearings have not yet started, because in most of the states, to the best of my knowledge, the technical members to be appointed by the state has not yet been appointed. So the structure of tribunal is such that there will be a judicial member, there will be a technical member appointed by the center, and there will be a technical member appointed by the state. So this is the state of affairs. So in the absence of tribunal, if you have some urgency, considering the nature of the matter which we are going to discuss in a moment, so one may approach the High Court. And we will also discuss that even if you have the option of filing a reply to the so-called notice, then what circumstances you may opt for filing of the writ petition before the High Court. So we will traverse through each and every stage, starting from the audit, investigation, or summon, or reply, and then going up to the High Court or even Supreme Court. And we'll also discuss, if time permits, a little bit about how to handle arrest and prosecution, because that is also part of handling litigation. So to start with, you receive an audit observation. That is the first step, section 65. Or it may be also under section 61, scrutiny of returns. So on the basis of scrutiny of your returns, the officer may observe some anomaly and may ask you to respond. But in a scrutiny of returns, the type of observation are very minimal. Whereas in an audit observation, since the generally 4 or 5 officers visits your premises, so they do in-depth scrutiny of your books of accounts, match it with the returns being filed by you, and then come to a conclusion one way or other about any evasion of tax with respect to, say, availing input tax credit, or the rate of tax at which you have paid the tax, the valuation which you have adopted, or any exemption you have claimed, or any other activity wherein probably one has evaded the tax by doing complete fraud in terms of clandestine removal of the goods being produced or goods being sold from the business premises without issuance of the invoices. So now, first and foremost, some practical aspects of dealing with the audit observation I would like to share. One is that, you see, by and large, you should presume that once audit observation is issued, then it is going to culminate into a so-called notice. It is very, very rare that you file a reply and the audit observation will be dropped. So by and large, my experience shows that even though you should put your best foot forward in your reply to the audit observation, but one must be very careful about what to say and what not to say at that stage. Because if you don't, you see, as far as the facts are concerned, if you don't correct the factual errors which is made in the audit observation, then you are losing an step. As far as the factual error are concerned, if suppose there are some error in understanding of the facts of the matter, if you brought it to the notice of the audit officer, then it may be possible that he will accept your response. But if he has a legal understanding of an issue in a particular manner. For example, he believes that the rate of tax which you have adopted should have been higher. You have probably availed 5% or 12%, whereas he believes that it should go to 18% bracket. Then more often than not, he will not accept your legal submissions. So I would suggest that at the audit observation stage, you should hold your breath. You should not exhaust all your, submissions. Because you see, audit observation is not the final notice issued to you. And I will tell you why you should not exhaust your breath. Is that once a so-called notice is issued in form DRC 01, then the officer cannot go back. Whatever stance or stand he has taken in issuance of the so-called notice, it cannot be improved any further in the order in original stage or in the appellate stage. But if in the audit observation he has made some technical error, even though suppose on merit you may not have a very good case, but on technical parameters or the manner in which the observation is raised against you, if you defend yourself, then you have a very good chance of succeeding. So in those cases, if you open all your cards at that stage itself, for example, at the audit observation stage or at the pre-so-called notice stage, which is DRC 01A. So these are all preliminary stages. So while on facts, you should counter the department's allegation with your full force and furnish all the evidence which you have in your possession to counter the allegation. But at that stage, as far as the legal submissions are concerned, you should not make your submissions in such a manner which gives the department to rectify its folly at the later stage, that is DRC 01 stage. Why I'm saying so? That section 75 subsection 7 of the GST Act says that order cannot be passed on any ground other than the ground which is part of the so-called notice. There is a Supreme Court judgment also of the Honorable Justice Padiwala, which says that the order cannot be on any ground than what is specified in the so-called notice. So, so-called notice is the last stage where you see the department can raise all their contentions and make all the allegations which they want to. But if they miss out on some important aspect, then you have a better chance at the later stages. It may be at the first appellate stage, it may be before the tribunal, it may be before the High Court. You have to wait, you have to be patient with your matter. But ultimately, if the department has made some serious error in the manner in which they are observing, then you will succeed. So this is very important aspect which we must take care of. At the so-called notice, in reply to so-called notice, of course, you should take all the grounds. But while you see, now I have seen that in drafting the reply, you should not be repetitive. Now with the availability of the various AI tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, or maybe Claude or other, I mean, if you give it to them, they give a very nicely drafted reply, good English and everything. But one, it is very, I would say, uh, superfluous. Sometimes it is erroneous. The judgment which they cite are non-existent. and very verbose. So number one point is that you have to stick to the allegations. Even at the so-called stage, you should not address something which is not alleged. Maybe that you have a lot of material or the stuff. Maybe also because of your experience in the practice that you have dealt a similar matter of some other client and you have already a well drafted reply available in your chamber. But apparently what looks like a similar matter may not be similar in form of the manner in which the allegation have been made against you. So while drafting a reply, you should be very careful with what is the allegation and address just that and not beyond that. So you should not be verbose, should not go beyond what is alleged in the so-called notice. And also you should bring on record all the evidences which you wish to rely upon. Now another thing, many times the department relies upon various statements to issue a so-called notice, or they rely upon some documents to make some allegations, but they don't supply the copy of that. So as soon as the so-called notice is issued to you, you should write a letter to the department that, look, you have relied upon these documents and you must furnish a copy of the same to me. Secondly, if they are relying upon the statement of third parties, then you should seek cross-examination. Now, failure of the department to either supply you the relied upon document or give you the opportunity to cross-examine those persons whose statement is relied upon by the department to issue a so-called notice to you will vitiate the entire proceeding, and the Supreme Court and the various high courts have held time and again that such a proceeding is liable to be set aside on that ground alone, because it is a complete violation of natural justice. And also at this stage, if suppose relied upon document is not furnished or cross-examination is not given to you and an order is passed, then you can also approach the High Court to get the order quashed, because if you have not been able to effectively defend yourself in the absence of the relied upon documents or in the absence of the opportunity to cross-examine, then that is a ground itself to quash the order and remand it back to the authority. Now, while taking a decision whether to go to the writ court or not, you should be very careful as to how the so-called notice has been drafted and whose statement is relied upon and what are the documents which are missing. Why I'm saying so is that by going to the High Court, it gives a fresh lease of life to the department also, apart from giving a fresh lease of life to you. So if suppose the matter is such that you are a little weak on merits and you are not going to gain much by going back to the same authority, is except buying some time. So many a time the SSC takes the decision that चलिए थोड़ा टाइम मिल जाएगा, कम से कम 6 महीना 8 महीना वापस आएगा यहाँ पर, तो हम लोग इसको फिर से करेंगे, तो इसमें 6-8 महीना का टाइम हमरा 1 साल का टाइम हम लोग बर्बाद कर देंगे. लेकिन मेरा समझ ये है कि अगर आपका केस थोड़ा मेरिट में वीक है और आपने रिलाइड अपॉन डॉक्यूमेंट्स और क्रॉस एग्जामिनेशन मांगा है और डिपार्टमेंट ने नहीं दिया आपको और आप उसको लेकर ही आगे बढ़ जाते हैं, आप अपना जो भी आपको बोलना है you say in the appellate stage, even though it will cost you money in terms of pre-deposit and it will be a lengthy proceeding, but at the later stages when you go to the tribunal or the High Court, more often than not you can take it from me कि वो order quash हो जाएगा. Because violation of natural justice का absence में, if you have moved through the appellate stages, then the court will ordinarily not remand it back to the original authority, because you have crossed, say, 2 or 3 stages. First appeal, second appeal, then you go to the High Court. So they will not remand you back. And on the technicalities, you will succeed. So at every stage, you have to take a call what to do. Then, once the SOCOS notice you have received, the other technical aspect which you need to look into is whether it is within the limitation of time. There are several notifications which have been issued extending the limitation period under Section 73. Now you should see whether it is within that extended period or within the original time as stated in Section 73, because it is say within the extended period of Section Notification 9 2023 or Notification 56 2023, then those notifications have been quashed by Guwahati High Court and 1 or 2 other High Court also. So that can be a very good ground that, look, this SOCOS notice is issued beyond the period of limitation, and you can straight away approach the High Court, because issuance of a notice beyond the limitation period is beyond jurisdiction. And there are several, judgments. Because you see, if suppose the officer can pass the order within a prescribed period of time, and that time has gone, then the officer no more has the power to even issue a SOCOS notice to you. Even if you have, done some wrong, but the time limit has expired, then he cannot take any action against you. Similarly, if the notice is issued under Section 74, and the matter is a matter of interpretation of law, for example, classification issue, or some other technical matter where it is a subject matter of interpretation, say on that particular issue, there are judgments of various high courts on this side or that side, then obviously it is beyond jurisdiction and you can get it quashed directly from the High Court. Then another aspect which is very important with respect to investigation is, many a times it is seen these days that a parallel investigation is done both by the state and the central tax authorities on the same subject matter. Now it is contrary to Section 6, subsection 2, clause B of the GST Act. And if on the same subject matter, 2 different authorities have initiated the SOCOS notice or investigation, then that is liable to be set aside on that ground alone, and you can approach the High Court on that. Similarly, it has been seen sometimes that the audit authority or the investigating authority, like anti-evasion department or the jurisdictional officer, all of them are simultaneously pursuing you to investigate a particular issue. That is also not permissible in law, even though there is no specific provision to check that. But over a period of time, the various high courts have held that multiple authorities within the same department cannot pursue you. So that is another thing which one must look at the initial stage itself. Now, in drafting of the reply to the SOCOS notice, should be very careful about obtaining copy of all the documents from the initial stage. What reply the SSE has furnished from time to time, how they handle the matter. It may be that the matter comes to you at the order stage for filing of the appeal, or say at the stage of SOCOS notice, wherein you are engaged to draft a reply. So if those are the stages, then you must be very careful to obtain all the correspondences with the department prior to the stage from which you are handling the matter, so that you understand the entire fact, go through everything, and then start drafting your reply. Now, as far as the SCN is concerned, Sometimes it so happens that the so-called notice is vague. It is not based on any evidence or documents, or it assumes a fact which does not exist. So, if the so-called notice is vague or not specific, then that itself is a ground to get it quashed from the High Court. But again, I am adding a word of caution that you should always look at your matter from the merit perspective. Because if suppose the matter is very meritorious, then only one should venture to go to the High Court. If the matter is little weak on merit, then you should proceed with the reply to the so-called notice, because that will help you at the next stage. So whenever I'm saying that you can approach the High Court, you should have that word of caution in your head. I'll not repeat it again and again. Then, if suppose the so-called notice language is such that it appears that the officer concerned has already made up his mind, then such a so-called notice is also liable to be set aside by the High Court. There are several judgments of various Supreme Court and High Court in this particular matter. And obviously, you can approach the High Court. Now, another aspect which people get perturbed about is that if a particular time, very short time is given in the reply to the so-called notice, then there are two aspects of the matter. One is that both section 73 and 74 has a minimum time period before passing of the order. So they cannot pass the order before that time period. So if the officer has given you only 7 days, you can always seek additional time to furnish a reply. And if the order is passed violating that minimum period, then that order is bad in law and liable to be quashed by the High Court. Now, once you see, you come down to the drafting of the reply, then you should be careful that you narrate all the facts. You should have two sections. One is the allegation part of the so-called notice. What is the revenue allegation? Then factually, what are your submissions and what are the documents which you wish to rely upon? And then the legal submission. So it should be in that order. And while drafting the legal submission, I've seen a particular mistake which is made by many advocates or chartered accountants, that they straight away jump to the various judgments or authorities. So you should first formulate your submission. Because even if you see how the matters are argued in the court, it is not that there is a particular, your matter is covered by a particular judgment. So straight away you will say that, look, my matter is covered by this judgment and kindly pass an order accordingly. That is not how any tribunal or court like to hear you. They first want to understand the fact. What is the facts of your matter? What are your legal submission on the basis of interpretation of the law? Then only you go to the judgments or the citations. So citations should be in support of your legal contentions and not otherwise. You cannot put the horse before the cart. So that is very important. Now, in all your submissions, it may be that the language used by the officer is not so polite, but you cannot afford to be harsh in either writing or in your oral submission. You have to be polite always. And one advice which I would like to give as a matter of caution is that don't cut paste from some other matter. Even if they are apparently similar, make a fresh draft. And after drafting and everything, once your reply is ready, then you should prepare an index, do the page numbering, and have that index on top of the reply or your appeal. And you must ensure that all your documents which are enclosing should be properly legible. If you are taking a Xerox copy, they should be legible. If there is a difficulty in reading, suppose the font size of the original document is very small, then you should get it typed and enclose the typed copy. Now, many artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT and all, they do a very good job of typing, even though you should compare it with the original. But this typing work at least can be delegated to these AIs. Then, see, this is the handling of the litigation till the first step. Now, the second step, that once the original is passed. Now, yes, one more thing, that once you see the audit observation is received, or say scrutiny of return is done, or the officers calls you in response to section 70, someone or some search, seizure or inspection is going on. If there is a genuine error, then you should never, you see, for the sake of it, that कि चलो ठीक है अभी पैसा नहीं है तो लड़ लेते हैं. But the cost of litigation is the increased penalty. For example, if it is a non-fraud case, that is a section 73 case, then if you voluntarily pay the tax with the interest before the issuance of the so-called notice, then there is no penalty. And if you, even after receipt of the order, if you pay the tax with the interest within 30 days under section 73, then there is no penalty. Under section 74A, which is applicable from 2024-25, that time period has been increased to 60 days. Otherwise, you see, there is a minimum penalty of 10% of the tax amount. Whereas if it is a 74 case, which gets invoked in case of a fraud or misrepresentation or suppression of fact, then ordinarily the penalty amount is 100% of the tax evaded. But there also you get the benefit of the reduced penalty. If you pay the tax and interest before the issuance of the notice, then it is 15%. If you pay within 30 days of the issuance of the notice, then it is 25% of the tax amount. If you pay within 30 days of the passing of the order, then it is 50% of the tax amount. So many a times I've seen that the matters comes to me and it is as clear as the daylight that there is no merit in the matter, but the SAC is not advised at the right time to not dispute it further and avail the benefit of the reduced penalty. So one should always be very careful about that. Now, with respect to some issues, you always have to approach the High Court. There is no choice. For example, if there is a forceful recovery during investigation, suppose the investigation is done under section 67, and immediately you are asked to pay say 1 crore, 2 crore or whatever, and that is totally contrary to the own circular of the department and also the various judgments of the High Court, and it is liable to be refunded to you. So you can always approach the High Court to say that this has been forcefully recovered from me. I am ready to face the proceeding under the law after issuance of the so-called notice, maybe 73, maybe 74, whatever it may be. But I have a remedy to pay 10% at the first appeal stage, 10% at the second appeal stage, and there is an automatic stay. So the full amount of tax, even before the so-called notice has been issued to me, is not permissible in law. Then, like say, blocking of the credit ledger. If suppose your case, the reason for blocking is not in accordance with Rule 86A, then of course you can or should approach the High Court. If you are facing difficulty due to any portal related issues, technical issues, there is a passing of the order without giving an opportunity of hearing, Then cancellation of the registration. If your registration is cancelled and the time limit for filing the appeal or revocation of the registration is gone, then the only option left with you is to approach the High Court. And time and again, High Court has directed that if you pay the outstanding amount of the tax with interest and penalty, then the registration is to be restored, because you see, Article 19(1)(g) says that you cannot be prohibited from doing business. And Article 21 also, right to life, comes into play. So therefore, such an order which totally shuts down you from the system is not permissible, and writ court is the only option. Then if the order is passed beyond the scope of so cause notice or order in original in the appellate stage, then also you can approach the High Court. Then access or lack of jurisdiction. Suppose you are jurisdictionally assigned to state tax authorities, but the central tax authority issues notice to you and passes an order that is without jurisdiction and liable to be set aside. Then if there is any act or rules needs to be challenged, for example, there is a demand for reversal of input tax credit due to non-payment of tax by the supplier, then the only remedy available to you is to challenge the validity of section 16(2)(c). No tax authority, even if they are convinced with your bona fide, can grant you any relief because they are bound by the mandate of the law. So the only option is to approach the High Court through challenge of the validity of section 16(2)(c). Then suppose your bank account is frozen and you are unable to do your business, then also you have to approach the High Court only. Now here I must point out that sometimes they also freeze cash credit account. Now it is not permissible to freeze your cash credit account because what can be frozen is your assets, and cash credit account is not an asset, it is a liability. Only your property can be seized, and cash credit account by no strict definition is your property, it is your liability to the bank. So cash credit account cannot be provisionally attached or frozen. Then suppose the refund is not forthcoming, refund due to accumulated input tax credit or exports. Sometimes it so happens that because of some investigation going on against you, they stop granting refund. That is also not permissible in law. And if that happens, then you can always approach the High Court. Then if the so cause notice is issued without correctly determining the jurisdictional fact. What is a jurisdictional fact? For example, there is an allegation or direction to reverse ITC because you have not paid within 180 days to your supplier. Now it is factually incorrect. Or for example, there is an allegation of availing some credit which have not even availed. It is just there in the GSTR and GSTR 2A, and on the basis of analysis of GSTR 2A, they come to a conclusion that you have availed the credit. But it may be that you have yourself not availed the credit. So all these cases are error of jurisdictional fact, and those matters also can be taken to the High Court to get such a so called notice or order quashed. Now you once you see you have gone through the drafting of the reply or the appeal, then the stage arises to appear before the authority or say the tribunal. Now in your appearance, you should be very careful to have a short handy note, so that you can chronologically refer to that note while making a submission, so that you don't miss out on any point, whether it is a factual issue or whether it is a legal issue. And also, if you have a hand note ready, that if any question is asked to you, then you can immediately refer to that and point out that suppose the adjudicating officer or the appellate authority or the tribunal asks you any question, that you tell me this fact, and you have all the documents and everything in a very nicely manner, you have it in your hand note, then you can refer to it immediately instead of searching through your petition or your appeal or your reply. Because generally you see they do not have that much of passage that they will give you time for you to locate any fact or refer to assist them. When you are before the officer or the tribunal or the appellate authority, then you are there to assist them, and the assistance means that it should be quick and precise. So it is very important. Then if you are referring to the judgments, I would suggest that you make a compilation with an index of all the judgment, and instead of giving one by one or one after another, you give a compilation with an index with the relevant paragraph mark so that the officer or the tribunal can easily refer to them. Also, if they ask you any question, it may be very absurd, but you have to respond to them. Because you see, you have read your matter, you are very well versed with your matter, but the authority concerned is looking at that for the first time. Invariably, even if you have furnished a reply, they don't go through your paper in advance. So they are totally blank about the facts as well as the legal aspect of your matter. And you have to look at from their perspective that they, for the first time, are dealing with your matter. And they may ask some absurd questions, and you have to very patiently deal with what they are asking. You may have a particular chronological order in your mind or in your note to make your arguments, but you cannot stick to that. You have to first respond to the question, then you can come back again to what you wish to submit. So that is very important. You should not be too much of argumentative, in the sense that you should be very respectful. Of course, you have to place your case before the authority or the tribunal or the appellate authority, but it does not mean that you lose your temper or your cool, or even in your body language, your annoyance is reflected. It should be very, your demeanor also should be very calm, apart from the language or the words that you choose. You should address them very respectfully. For example, in the tribunal, the usual manner is always to address the court by your honor. We call the high court judges as your lord, my lords, or your lordship. But for the tribunal, you can stick to your honor. Generally, before the tribunal, we don't refer to them as sir. We address them as sir if it is an appellate authority or the adjudicating authority. Then after your hearing is over, it is advisable to give a short written submission. Now, short written submission should not be that you reproduce your entire appeal and everything in a written submission. The purpose of the written submission is to assist the officer concerned to pass the order when you are not present there. So it should be as precise as possible. And however much you have to say, you state that in a bulleted form, preferably not exceeding 3 pages. Maximum, it should not go beyond 5 pages under no circumstance. Because you see, nobody has the time to go through a lot of stuff. Even you would not like to read what you write. So one of the tests to see that you have written too much is that if you try to correct the errors, if any, and if you find it boring, then obviously your draft is verbose. So whether it is your appeal or whether it is your reply to so cause notice, it should be brief and concise. But written submission should definitely be very, very concise to the extent possible. And as far as the citation of the judgment is concerned, there is no need to reproduce the paragraphs and all. You can just say that this is your arguments or the proposition of law, and in support of that proposition, you are relying upon these judgments. You just mark the relevant paragraph and pages. That's all. Not more than that. Then if you are relying upon any circular or anything, that also should be part of your compilation only. And if suppose the matter is adjourned for any reason, suppose you go to an authority and the authority concern is not available for any reason, then you should wait. Or if you suppose you have to, if he is handling with some other issues, or he has been called by his senior, or is busy with something, then you cannot afford to show your frustration or anger, and you enter his chamber or you start saying, अरे सर आपने इतना देर मेरे को क्यों बैठा दिया, मेरे को और भी काम है, यू एंड ऑल दैट. तो आप वहां पर अपना इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं दिखा सकते. आप गए हैं क्लाइंट के काम के लिए, वॉट एवर बिजी शेड्यूल यू मे हैव, once you are before an authority or you are in the tribunal, you have to wait for your turn to come. और अगर कोई कारण से एडजॉर्नमेंट हो जाता है, मैटर उस दिन नहीं हो पाता है ऑफिसर की अनुपस्थिति की वजह से या कोई और वजह से, तो आप उसके जूनियर्स को भी अपना फ्रस्ट्रेशन या गुस्सा ना दिखाए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल सुप्रिटेंडेंट टेक्निकल है या उनका क्लर्क है या पियोन है, आप अपना टेम्पर वहां पर ना लूज करें, क्योंकि उनके कान में खबर जाएगी. और अगर आप अपना व्यवहार अच्छा रखेंगे तो वो बात भी खबर जाएगी और उसका आपको आगे में लाभ मिलेगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल रिसेंटली वन of my friend was narrating to me an incident that he went to attend a appellate matter before appellate authority in Chandigarh from Calcutta event. तो पहले दिन ऑफिसर नहीं था, कोई कारण से नहीं आया था, तो क्लाइंट वाज रियली वेरी पिस्ड एंड अनॉयड. तो उन्होंने उसे बताया कि भाई आप जो भी बोलना है बाद में बोलिए, यहां पर टेम्पर मत दिखाइए. और उन्होंने बहुत पोलाइटली उसको डिरेक्टर उसके सामने डांटा कि भैया ये सब बदतमीजी मत करो, और जरूर उनका कोई वजह रहा होगा, कुछ फंस गए होंगे तो नहीं आ पाए. तो उनके अच्छे व्यवहार की जो बात थी वो अपलेट ऑफिसर के कान तक भी पहुंची, और अगली बार जब वो हियरिंग में गए तो उन्होंने बहुत पेशेंटली उनको सुना, उनकी सारी बातों को समझा, और even though the matter was difficult, but ultimately just few days back he has got a favorable order. So your behavior, your manner, everything counts, so you should be very careful about that. So with this I conclude whatever the practical aspects I wanted to discuss. Now if you have any query, I can deal with that. I can see two queries before me by Rahul Parasurampuriya. One is that what changes in GST law would reduce the litigation the most in your opinion? I think one of the litigation area is the multiplicity of the rate of tax. Now this is not only causing a lot of litigation today, but in future also it is going to continue to cause a lot of litigation. But having said that, it is easier said than done to say कि यहां पर एक टैक्स रेट पूरे देश में हो जानी चाहिए, क्योंकि जो कंट्री की जो डाइवर्सिटी है और जो डिफरेंट सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी की जो नीड है, फॉर एग्जांपल लग्जरी आइटम में टैक्स रेट गवर्नमेंट ले सकता है, या जो जो वस्तुएं एफ्लुएंट समाज के द्वारा कंज्यूम की जाती है, उसमें सरकार ऑब्वियसली ज्यादा टैक्स रेट लेना चाहेगा। जो आम लोगों के या रोजमर्रा की जो आइटम है, उसका टैक्स रेट गवर्नमेंट ने कम किया है, या तो नील कर दिया है या 5% किया है। सो दैट इज वन थिंग। अनदर थिंग इज दैट the language which is used is not simple even for the lawyers or the chartered accountant to understand. So the government should look into the simplification of the language. That is another thing. Then another of his question is, which area of the GST should we focus on first to understand litigation better? You see, there is no particular area I would suggest. The area is that you have to understand the bare Act in totality from start to finish, and particularly the provisions relating to the input tax credit, the valuation, the charging provision, section 7, then the provisions relating to the audit proceeding, summons, then of course your section 73, 74, the difference between that. So all those things one have to be very grasp properly, read the bare act again and again, and read the judgments. Yes, one last thing which I wanted to discuss is with respect to the arrest and bail. I mean, more often than not, with respect to the dispute relating to input tax credit, if the demand is more than 5 crore, then there are chances that department may arrest. So in those cases, to avoid arrest, one is that you should keep the department in good humor by making some payment. Even if you are not able to pay the total demand, so try to bring it below 5 crore rupees so that your risk of getting arrested reduces. Then if you are facing a someone and you have not done anything wrong, and you have an apprehension that you might be arrested, that if you participate in the proceeding, then either one can take an anticipatory bail, or one can also approach the High Court in form of writ petition to take a declaration that there will be no coercive measures against you if you participate in the proceeding. Then with respect to bail, once the memo of arrest is given, then you should very carefully examine it to see whether it satisfies all the grounds of arrest which should be there in your arrest memo as laid down in Radhika Agarwal. So you should certainly go through this judgment of Radhika Agarwal of the Honorable Supreme Court again and again. And of course, Vihan Kumar also, one judgment is there of the Honorable Supreme Court. Because Vihan Kumar says that the arrest memo should be furnished to the relatives also, along with the ground of arrest, because the arrestee is not in a calm state of mind to effectively defend himself. Then in the ground of arrest, what Honorable Supreme Court says is that there must be a computation provided to you to enable you to defend yourself whether that threshold of 5 crore is exceeded or not. It may be that department, you see, that puts a figure that you have 10 crore rupees, but no detail is furnished to you as to how they have arrived at that 10 figure. Then you can challenge the legality of that arrest itself in the writ petition or before the session court when you approach for the bail to seek the challenge the legality of it. So with this, I would like to conclude, because we are coming to the end of the hour or so which we intended to discuss. So thank you. If you have any other question, I would like to be very happy to deal with that.
Thank you, Mr. Vinay. And one is, what are the critical steps in the GST appeal process? And how can one ensure that their case is presented effectively? So you have covered it, but it's a very pointed query.
So appeals are it is very important. And one particular thing which people miss out is that apart from all that I have said, that the appellate stage you are dealing with the order in original. Maybe there are, you see, a particular manner that is so-called notice is issued to you. So first of all, you should compare your order in original with the so-called notice to see if it goes beyond the scope of so-called notice. If it does, then it violates section 75 subsection 7. And to that extent, it is liable to be set aside on that ground alone. But apart from that, you are not dealing with the so-called notice anymore. So you should not say more than what has been decided against you in the order in original. So while drafting a appeal, you should look at the finding part where your finding against you is given in the order instead of looking at the so-called notice and repeating what you have replied in the so-called notice. Maybe there is some additional, you see, uh, parameters which are developed at the order in original stage. So, or something is dropped at the order in original state. So some point is already dropped, then you need not address that. So that is very important. Apart from that, everything else which I have discussed, one must take care of those things.
This is what do you feel that what is the impact of the technology in the GST litigation?
Technology, the one of the impact is that nowadays most of the so-called notices or the proceeding is arising out of the data analytics. That is one. Another is that due to portal controlling the entire implementation of the law. So sometimes it has been seen that the portal is not in consonance with the law. The law says something and the portal behaves in a different manner. So that is one of the very big challenge in the GST era. And also sometimes you see in your attempt to file your appeal, if there is any, you see, technical glitches, then that is also causing a lot of anxiety and things like that.
One question is, it's a long question. You can read it in the chat box, and that will be the last question.
Yes, this is a question by CA Firm, AFA and Company. So the question goes like this, that if the summon have been issued by the GST authority, okay, let me read it, then I will rephrase it. So his query is that there is a demand of 8 crore rupees from certain supplier whose registration has been cancelled or suspended. Now, out of those amount, he has already received a DRC 01A for 3.5 crore rupees. So can the department proceed with the arrest? Yes, legally speaking, the department can certainly proceed with the arrest since the amount exceeds 8 crore rupees. But if the facts which you are stating is correct and the goods have been received by your client and you have all the evidences to establish the bona fide of the transaction of your client, then without waiting any further, you should approach the High Court. Because what will happen is, because now you see there are judgment of the Supreme Court itself and various High Court which says that the ITC cannot be denied solely on the ground of cancellation of the supplier's registration. And if that is the facts of the case, then if you approach the High Court, then in all likelihood, you will get a stay from the High Court. Even if there is no stay, the department will certainly not arrest you if the matter is pending before the High Court. So my suggestion is that if you have, this is the fact of your case, and there is no malified, I mean, the transaction is genuine. You have all the documents to establish the genuineness of those transactions, that then whichever High Court your client is registered in, you should approach that particular high court and get your difficulty redressed, or the threat of arrest which is looming large over your head, at least be settled for the time being. There is no need to approach for the anticipatory bail or seeking a stay on the arrest. Instead, you can get the proceeding itself stayed.
So thank you, Mr. Vinay, for sharing your knowledge. And do stay connected with us. Next week, we will be connected with Shankar Moldi. Do join us. He will give us the nitty-gritties of will. Thank you.
So I am giving my number also in the chat box. So if anybody has any further query, then you can directly text me on my personal number, and or you can take it from Mr. Chatrat also.
Yes.
And I'll be happy to deal with your queries.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.